At American University, we have built a legacy of leadership, scholarship, and service fueled by a passionate commitment to bettering our communities. That legacy now includes a strategic plan focused on preparing AU changemakers to make a real impact on the world. American University Alumni Association affinity groups are committed to supporting this plan. Our affinity groups are dedicated to promoting and supporting the university's commitment to inclusive excellence. We celebrate individual identities and common experiences. We foster a sense of community, seeking to support both students and fellow alumni in developing personal and professional networks. With a broad range of affinity programming, we eagerly seek your active participation. AU's alumni affinity groups are connecting graduates and students by providing mentorship, network opportunities, and student outreach. For example, our Black and Latino alumni alliances promote the Book Awards, which are scholarships that support access and equity for students of color. The Pride Alumni Alliance, in conjunction with the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, hosts an annual Pride Friendsgiving for members of the LGBTQ community and allies, which offers an inclusive space to commune during the Thanksgiving holiday. AU is a place to celebrate our identities, to strengthen the bonds that tie us together. We're creating a more diverse community, student experience, and building a stronger university. Join us as we celebrate you, celebrate us, celebrate one AU.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Megan Rumler, and I'm the newly appointed chair for American University's Asian and Pacific Islander Alumni Network, or APIAN for short. I'm so happy we're all gathered together on this significant day, because together we can take a moment to recognize that today marks the second anniversary of the Atlanta, Georgia spa shooting that claimed 8 lives, 6 of whom were of Asian descent. And if possible, I'd like to take a moment of silence to honor the victims and their families and to offer support for those that might be grieving today. Thank you for taking that moment of remembrance and solidarity as a community. Resuming our event, on behalf of APIAN, I'd like to welcome you to this conversation with members of our AAPI community, past, present, and future, who will engage in a meaningful roundtable discussion with American University's Vice President of Campus Life and Inclusive Excellence, Dr. Fanta Ah, and American University's President, Sylvia M. Burwell. The purpose of tonight's event is for us to come together to explore issues affecting members of the AAPI community at American University. Together, we will acknowledge and recognize events of our past, celebrate the progress and achievements of our present, and work together to identify ways to transform our future. While the pandemic has impacted our ability to come together physically, we've managed to engage alumni globally through virtual programming. Events like tonight allow us to welcome fellow Eagles across the globe while supporting AU's mission and vision for inclusive excellence and the goals and objectives of APIAN. As chair of APIAN, I would like to extend my sincerest appreciation to President Burwell and Dr. Ah for their leadership and support of this evening's event. Their attendance and participation is a direct reflection of the university's dedication and commitment to creating and sustaining a truly inclusive environment at American University. I look forward to continuing these conversations and seeing the Asian and Pacific Islander Alumni Network continue to make a transformative impact. Remember, once an eagle, always an eagle. Now I'd like to pass the program to AU Alumni Board Member and proud AU Eagle, Don Mike Mendoza, who will lead tonight's discussion.
Thank you so much, Megan, and congratulations to you for being our newly appointed chair. It's a very exciting time for APIAN, and tonight is such an awesome opportunity to get us together to talk about what's important to us. So like you said, once an eagle, always an eagle. I feel like I never not talk about AU wherever I am, anywhere in the world. And hello to everybody who's joined us tonight for our panel. So again, I'm Don Mike Mendoza. I'll serve as your moderator tonight for our virtual roundtable discussion. And I'm coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm a current member of the AU Alumni Board. I did serve as 2 chairs ago for APIAN, and I'm a proud double eagle with my BA from SOC and CAS and my MA from SOC. So tonight's platform is for our community to engage with both President Burwell and Dr. Fanta our Vice President for Campus Life and Inclusive Excellence, to better understand the university's commitment to AU's AAPI community. But before I introduce the program participants, it's my huge honor and pleasure to introduce our 15th president and the first woman to serve as AU's president. She is a visionary leader with sizable experience in both the public and private sectors, and brings to AU her extensive knowledge of managing complex organizations and advancing solutions to some of the world's most pressing challenges. So please join me in welcoming President Sylvia Ambrowell.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Don, for that introduction. And Megan, thank you for kicking us off. And Megan, a special thanks for the moment of silence. Just want to reflect on that and reflect on this 1-year anniversary, that I think that makes this event even more important. An important event, but today as the anniversary, I think makes what we're doing today and this evening and the conversation that we are embarking on even more important. And I want to make a few remarks just before we jump into the panel. And first and foremost, I want to thank the Asian Pacific Islander Alumni Network for their leadership to gather us to host this important conversation. A special thanks to Don Mike, and to our panelists, Sumita, Mina, Maisha, Megan, and Tanya, who I know we're going to be hearing a lot more from during the panel, and Fanta, of course. And I'm deeply grateful for the investment that you all have made in inclusive excellence work as being a part of this, and this entire group has made to our inclusive excellence work. And to those of you who may have joined us for the first time, or for the first time in a long time, whichever category you're in, welcome home, and we're so glad you're here. And one of the things that's really important about an evening like this is that we want to hear your feedback and your engagement, and are so proud that you're alumni or that you're students of American University. And before I begin, I just want to recognize the importance that we do this and that we engage in this way in terms of conversation. And I want to start by saying that something that resonates with me, and it was actually one of the quotations that was up on the slides that we saw, and that's, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And this was my experience when I came to American University almost 5 years ago. And I understood the immense potential for our community, but I know that in order for us to make that critical progress, we need to accelerate our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we worked with the community to build a strategic plan. And interestingly, the first element of the strategic plan was actually our inclusive excellence strategy. And it was based on community feedback. And we have prioritized 3 goals within that work. And one is building a sense of belonging for all members of our community. 2, ensuring that our students have full access to the AU experience. And 3, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion throughout our teaching, throughout our learning and our research missions in terms of our core mission. And I'm reminded that that work matters more than ever as we have witnessed the increasing acts of hate that are directed against our Asian and Asian American communities across this country. And it's important to me as a leader of American and in our work to ensure that we have graduates that graduate with the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes to truly be change makers in a changing world. And understanding these issues, thinking about these issues are an essential part of that. And for me, the work is personal as well. And I think most people know, but many may not know, that I am the mother of an Asian American son. Our son is adopted from Bhutan. And so I'm proud of all of who he is. And so this work is important to me, both as a leader of our university, because I think it's so important. It's important to me as a mother. And it's my hope that every young person can live and work in a world that's free from bigotry and where we all feel fully valued and respected. And as president, I want you to know that we stand in solidarity with our Asian and Asian American community members as we work together to combat racism and discrimination in all forms. And one of the things I think is important as we do this work is making sure that there are actions that support those words. We have a new Asian Pacific and Diaspora Studies program. It's housed in our new CAS Department of Critical Race, Gender, and Culture Studies. And we're very excited that Professor Lily Wong and the CRGC department has taken on the new leadership role as Associate Director of Faculty Engagement and Initiatives for AU's Anti-Racist and Research Policy Center. We've committed to recruiting and retaining diverse faculty leaders, and as of fall 2020, 9.1% of the total faculty self-identify as Asian Americans, and these faculty are distributed through most areas of our academic fields of study. And in supporting student success and the access, the university is committed to enhancing socioeconomic diversity as well. So supporting first-generation students, and we actively recruit in key regions around the country, including California, Hawaii, among other regions. And we're happy to note that our retention rates actually among our Asian Americans, first-gen and Pell students continue to be strong, but that's something we have to keep focusing on. And we've seen some important progress, but we know we still have a lot more work to do, and that's a part of this conversation. So I look forward to the roundtable discussion as an opportunity for me to hear and listen and more deeply understand the needs and concerns of our community and help us think about promising pathways for our future equals. So we believe that conversations like this are an important part of the progress. So with that, I want to turn it back over and get this conversation started.
All right, thank you so much, President Burwell. We really appreciate you being here. We recognize your commitment and Dr. Oh's commitment and the work that you do to lead AU's plan for inclusive excellence, and your constant level of availability and assistance for all of our students. We so truly appreciate you being part of tonight's discussion. So, for everyone, tonight is meant to be a community event. So we welcome audience engagement by using the question or Q&A feature to ask your questions. We will come around to them at the end of the panel discussion. And feel free to share any thoughtful feedback on areas of improvement or highlight spaces where the university is doing well and can perhaps lean into more in the chat. And now, please allow me to introduce the voices joining me at the table. And panelists, please turn on your cameras as I introduce each of you. So first is a recent alumna of the university, Sumita Bhattarai, followed by Mina Cato. And then we have Maisha Maliha Hok, and also Chaitanya Venkateshwaran, all members of the Asian Pacific Islander Alumni Network. And then, of course, last but certainly not least at all, we're honored to have one of our most dedicated AU leaders join us, Dr. Fanta Ah, our Vice President of Campus Life and Inclusive Excellence. So I'd say welcome to everyone. How are you all this evening?
Doing well, great to be here.
So thank you again to all of you for lending your voices and offering all of your responses tonight. So we're going to jump right in. So the first question that we've got on deck will be to Chaitanya. So as an active student leader, what are 3 points of pride that you would consider sharing with a prospective Eagle who's considering AU, or a current student who needs additional encouragement to continue their journey at American?
Thank you so much for that question. I think the biggest thing that a lot of college students search for is a sense of community. And I think that AU does a wonderful job of providing that to students, not just in terms of representation among faculty and clubs and councils, but also just within the kind of activities and events that are hosted for students of all different identities. For example, just yesterday, we had a event that intersected the South Asian Students Association at AU and the Project Pengyu, which is the Chinese American Students Association. And we had samosas and boba, and it was a fun night of music. And I think that it's events like that that allow us to interact with people who we identify with and maintain and continue our cultural affiliations while we're kind of taking our first steps away from home and away from our familiar surroundings. Other than that, of course, there's wonderful representation amongst our clubs. We have like 5 or 6 different clubs that I know of that deal with different aspects of the Asian Pacific Islander identity at AU. And it provides a space for us to express our grievances, have our conversations, and also celebrate our identities. And as a student, I feel like that's the biggest addition that we have, apart from, of course, the wonderful facilities, faculty, and infrastructure that AU provides.
Thank you so much, Chaitanya. And it's, to echo you, this event is also, it's a call to action for our students. We want to make sure that the students are as involved as possible, especially after you leave campus, that you can come back and be part of APIAN and to continue to support, especially with initiatives that we have going on, like our APIAN book scholarship that started a year and a half ago. So plenty of opportunities to support and to help make our community become more successful. So our second question tonight will be to Sumita. So as we continue to see an incremental increase in AAPI student recruitment, we're also super thrilled to have affinity spaces to celebrate the vast level of diversity that exists within our culture, because Asian is a very large, broad term. There's many, many different cultures and countries that covers. And so affinity graduations are a tangible example of AU's work to bridge those connections with our students and alumni, to continue that lifelong connection to the university, which I'm so excited, hopefully, that our AAPI graduation ceremony comes back, because that was really fun when we did that a couple years ago. So to you, Sumita, what efforts are underway to increase visibility and to build a sense of belonging among AAPI students on AU's campus, as well as celebrate and explore the diversity within our community, especially as somebody who graduated so recently? What can you kind of tell us about from your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Don Mike. So from my experience at AU, and I guess after for the past 2 years, one of the biggest things that I've really noticed has increased like drastically over time since I was a freshman is like the collaboration between all of these AAPI identifying student groups, clubs, and organizations on campus. And I think Chaitanya actually really touched upon that with the event that they had on campus yesterday. When I was a freshman, a lot of these groups existed, but they operated pretty independently. So I don't think we really felt this sense of collectiveness, but over time, like all of these groups and organizations really coming together and creating these events together, I think it really creates that overarching sense of belonging that Chaitanya was mentioning for the whole AAPI community, not just on campus, but for alumni and beyond. And I think the Affinity graduations is such a great example of like how students, student groups, and AU in general kind of come together to celebrate culture and like create that sense of belonging and bridge connections between students and alumni. I was fortunate enough to be the committee chair of the inaugural AAPI Affinity graduation, which took place in 2019. I can't believe it was, I don't know, is that 3 years ago already? But I worked together with student leaders from the South Asian Student Association, the Asian American Student Union, Hawaii Club, a bunch of organizations, and we worked together to bring that Affinity graduation to life. And so that graduation actually came about with the Inclusive Excellence Plan that was, I believe, released like a year back in 2017. And one of the goals in that plan was for AU's commitment to creating designated meeting and social spaces for registered student groups. And at that point, we didn't have the AAPI Affinity graduation. And so all the student groups came together and we were like, we need to have a graduation ceremony for AAPI seniors. And since that goal kind of aligned perfectly with the Inclusive Excellence Plan, we were like, okay, we're going to do this. So we reached out to the alumni department, we reached out to the API Alumni Network, and we kind of just discussed how we could receive funding, guidance, and support to make sure that graduation continued, not only for that year, but it was institutionalized and implemented for years beyond just 2019. And it's so great to see that since then, the graduations continue today. And it's not only just for Asian and Pacific Islanders, but I know there are graduation ceremonies for several other groups, including Black and African heritage, Latinx, veterans. I know there's a lavender grad for the LGBTQIA plus community. And I believe I heard there is also a new graduation this year for first generation. And so that goes to say, like, just how all of these affinity graduations were established in collaboration between students, student groups, alumni, AU staff, university administration. I think looking forward, if we just continue to see this collaboration between everyone in areas beyond just the graduation ceremony, I think us as a community, we would definitely feel more supported by the university in any DEI efforts, but I think it would also bring about like more creative events and meeting spaces for us to just celebrate our culture and diversity on campus for students and alumni and the API community in a broader sense. So yeah.
Thank you, Sunita. And I remember you did an excellent job planning with your committee, the AAPI graduation, the first one ever, which was, I will always remember that. I will try to make that part of my calendar every year to be there once we're back in person. So before I bring the next two questions for Dr. Ah, I did want to also acknowledge that we have an amazing panel of women and participants during this Women's Month. So happy Women's Month to everybody. Thank you all for your contributions in all of the departments and places that you exist. And we really appreciate your participation today. So Dr. Ah, the first question has to do with the fact that the AAPI community at large is in the midst of an alarming nationwide spike in Asian hate crimes, unfortunately. Based on new research published by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, hate crimes targeting the AAPI community increased by a crazy 339% in 2021 compared to 2020. And these hate crimes have our communities very much on edge as recently as this last week in New York. So what steps does AU intend to take to continue to address this issue among its undergraduate, graduate, and alumni AAPI communities?
Thank you. Thank you, Don Mike. Yeah, no, first of all, I mean, the statistics are staggering, to say the least, and just sort of really leaves you breathless. A couple of things. One is that I think just, contextually, this is not a new issue, right? I think there's been, a wave of this, and we can go back to so many, different time periods where we've seen this, this spike. And a big piece of, at least at an institutional level that I'd like to speak to are two things. One is when it comes for anything that would be qualified as a hate crime, there are protocols and would immediately want to go to a federal level in anything that is at that level. So they're really, I just want to start with that in general, and how that would need to be taken incredibly seriously, but also really follow, all of the judicial process that is needed to get that to the place that it needs to, because what it does to community is unspeakable. And we've seen this with Atlanta, we've seen this in New York, we've seen it across the country, how these things are just is horrendous. So there's that piece. From a university level, I think there are several things that we have to take into consideration. One is, as an educational institution, we have to talk about what is the role of education and what component of that can really directly address issues of bigotry and bias that exists within our respective areas, and how do we really get to that through education awareness. That's an important part of it, and that happens at, I think, on multiple levels. It happens with, first of all, acknowledging these issues, and then it really rises to the perspective of the curriculum and how are we introducing these issues to students, how are we educating students about the importance of those, and how are we really preparing them for the future that we have and the world that we're in. That's one aspect of it. And that is for the communities in particular that are not cognizant of these issues and often are not playing the role of allies. The most immediate piece has to do with, for the students who are coming from the communities that we've talked about, the AAPI community, it's really creating the sense of belonging and making sure that students understand first and foremost that they do belong here. And that doesn't just happen because, as you've heard, from Sumita, who I've known in her leadership role while she was at AU for pretty much from freshman year on. And then you look at Chaitanya, who's also has been in this leadership role, and Mina, who was, head of the Graduate Leadership Council and so forth. You have to really build the infrastructures that allow the students who are coming in to know that there's a sense of belonging here. And that doesn't just happen. You have to create the environment for it. And then you need to ensure that you're really cultivating that among the students. And, the Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander is an incredibly broad and very diverse community. And so, I think as Sumita indicated, you have, the South Asian Student Association, the Hawaii Club, you have Zyron, you have, the list sort of goes on. But what I think is key is also helping our community understand what is the point of intersection of that. And so I would say, from an educational perspective, is ensuring that the curriculum is really educating and really helping students understand, and faculty and others understand, the biases that are there. But it also involves faculty development, because for faculty to really ensure that students in their classrooms and so forth have a sense of belonging in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So creating the environment, creating the space, making sure that there's the educational programs that are there. And then I think it's incredibly important for our communities to see themselves and to see themselves across our institution. And so that's another part of it. And this is where the representation piece really does matter, because what it does is that it then reinforces for folks, yes, you can too. And yes, you do belong here. And so that is another piece as well. So whether it's our faculty affinity groups, whether it's our staff affinity groups, that becomes another very important anchor of it as we do the work that is needed around this. But this is really an issue that we have to pay particular attention to, because we also know that whenever we have hard times, there's scapegoating that goes on. And those societal issues are incredibly harmful to communities. And it breaks trust in a way that I think is incredibly challenging.
Absolutely. And, Dr. Rao, you're so good that you answered the second question I had for you in your remarks. It was about our AU's faculty and staff and diversifying and representation. And so I think that's excellent. And, thank you so much for what you do to ensure that that mission is followed. So did you want to expand? Did you want to expand a little bit more on?
If you don't mind, I just want to, yes. Don Mike, if you don't mind, just, I think that, how Fanta framed it is exactly, there are the incidents and those need to be cared for. When there are these incidents, how those occur and how they are cared for, and whether that's the kind of thing that we're talking about in terms of potential hate crimes, in terms of things that go into a Title IX process, in terms of student conduct, and having those processes that are there but also at the same time, as she said, as Fanta said, focusing on bringing not our whole community along and being part of the solution, part of the education. And I'm so glad, Don Mike, you were going to ask the second part, and Fanta got to it, because while we're working hard with our students who come to us and are here for our educational mission, we have to focus on the staff and faculty as well. And in terms of that educational portion, and whether that's through the anti-bias training that we do, the training that we require for anyone who's going to be interviewing for faculty positions. If you're going to interview for a faculty position, you have to go through this training because it is an important part of what we're doing. And to Tanya, you just made me so happy by telling me about talking about the bringing together, because we think that's actually an important part of this too, in terms of how the community builds strength together in terms of that. And so couldn't be more pleased that you, because that is something we have been emphasizing across all the communities, and even the MCAR, and that is an event in terms of how we think about that, even a broader sense of the communities, but how we build strength, like weaving in terms of that within this particular community. In terms of it has lots of different parts within the broader thing. So the idea that we need to focus on education when events happen, making sure that there are processes that are trusted and people can work through, how we support the community in the kinds of activities that Sumita and Chaitanya both described, we believe are important parts of getting to a place where there are fewer events, and that we have a community, because even when these events we know occur outside of AU and in the country, we know how that impacts our students, our staff, and our faculty in terms of their feelings. So creating those things that when those events happen, that there's a community, there's a sense of support is an important part of even when these things happen outside of where we are.
Thank you, President Burwell. And, to acknowledge a comment in the chat, and it's kind of on the same thing exactly what we were talking about. Someone mentioned that they were talking about maybe AU could have, and it sounds exactly like what we were talking about with MCAR, looking for a cultural day at AU that's not only for AAPI, but also for other cultural students to bring their cultures forward, share and educating others, cultural food, music, dances, clothing, etc., art. So it seems like we're all on the same page here, where we really want to see that happen more in our community to build that sense of togetherness and solidarity as an AU community. So with that, our next question will go to Maisha Hogue. So as our new vice chair for APIAN, congratulations to you for being appointed. We're so excited to have you. What legacy do you hope to create for future AU Eagles, particularly AU AAPI community members?
Thanks, Don. Primarily, we hope to build a sturdy bridge between the alumni community and the AAPI students on the theme of community. We also want to be a reliable source for them during their time as students, and also as a part of the alumni community. We have a really proud AAPI alumni community, and they come from all walks of life and have all kinds of careers, and we want to make sure that students have access to that and know that they are a resource as they enter the workforce themselves and the alumni community. I also hope that the AAPI network will promote diversity and inclusion practices to ensure that the AAPI community has a seat at every table where decisions are made at AU. And I saved the best for last, which is our APIAN Book Award, which we hope to continue to alleviate the financial burden of purchasing textbooks for AAPI students through this award. So those are some of the legacies we hope to leave behind.
Awesome. And, I'm so proud to say that I was helpful and part of the creation of the book award. And we really hope that we can keep pushing forward to get that up to endowment. So our next question will be to Mina Cato. There's a tremendous power within our community, as you know, and it's amazing the impact that we can create when we collectively rally behind an initiative like the Book Scholarship. And so the question that I have for you is, how can APIA and alumni who are not located in the greater DC region be more involved in our affinity group? Whether it be through time, through their treasures, through their talent. What do you think, or how do you think they can get involved from wherever they are, not just in DC?
Thanks, Don Mike, for that question. And I just want to echo something that you and Maisha both mentioned and say that you're absolutely right. The Affinity Book Awards and specifically the APIAN Book Award is a great way for alumni, wherever they might be located, to support AAPI students. I just wanted to put in another plug for that. And also in response to your question, to echo on another point you had mentioned on Mike about MCAR, I would like to acknowledge that, participating and attending MCAR, which is the Multicultural Alumni Reunion, an annual series of activities that celebrate all of the cultural identities of AU, is another fantastic opportunity to support and connect with AU's AAPI and the broader multicultural community at AU. And I'm not just saying that as former chair of MCAR, but it truly is a great way to get involved and support AU's efforts to promote inclusive excellence and a greater sense of belonging, as President Burwell said, for all members of the community. And I know every year we always appreciate having President Burwell, Dr. Aw, and leaders and members of the community come in support of MCAR. So that's just another great opportunity to support, along with attending all of the other great alumni affinity events that are hosted with the Alumni Association. There are other opportunities that alumni can get involved in, from connecting with their regional alumni network and the young alumni chapters in DC and New York City for different events and volunteer opportunities, both nationwide and globally. There are also opportunities to mentor, to hire, to give back to students and young alumni through different initiatives such as the Dinner with Alumni program, career fairs, and other initiatives hosted in conjunction with the Career Center and, again, the Alumni Association. Lastly, one other opportunity that I'll mention is, ways that alumni can support student professional development. So actually each year, the Career Center provides funds to qualified students to take an unpaid internship, to attend a conference, et cetera, other ways to further their career without having the burden of extra financial strain. And so alumni can actually give back to the Student Career Development Fund to help us increase the number of students who can access this opportunity, again, without having that burden of additional financial strain. So that's another great opportunity that alumni can get involved wherever they might be located. And I'll just say that there are so many opportunities for alumni to, again, share their time, their talent, their treasure to support students and young alumni. And in closing, I would encourage those who haven't already to go to the Alumni Association website, update your contact information so that you can receive all of this great information. You can be in the know of all of these opportunities and ways to get involved and give back and stay connected. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to go update your information. If you have any, other questions or do want to get involved, I know the Alumni Association is always interested in hearing from you. Same with the APIAN, APN, for folks who want to get more involved in our efforts as well. Thank you, Don Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Mina, I appreciate it. We've now come to the Q&A section. So if you have any thoughts or comments or questions that you're wanting to ask our panel, now's the time. You can drop them in the chat and we'll definitely ask it here of our group. But in the meantime, while I wait for any questions to come through, I do want to make a quick acknowledgement to my fellow AU Alumni Board members who are here on the panel today. Shout out to Bradley White, to Jolene McNeil, for being here. Also, a huge shout out to Courtney Searles, our Vice President of Development and Alumni Relations, who's also on the call today. We really thank you for your participation and support across the board. Does anybody have any comments from the panel while we wait for any questions that might come through the next few minutes?
Go ahead.
I just want to say MCAR is one of the best events that this university has every year. And I'm so glad that someone put in that comment, because it is food, it is art, it is energy, it is just the best and the best of AU when we bring everyone together. And in terms of engagement and coming for an event, I just want to recommend that one highly as something that is just a wonderful time for all of us together, that does emphasize all those great things that represent all kinds of important parts of our community. As I said, it's the food, it's the art, the music, and it is just an incredible high energy event. And I'm going to knock wood right now and be hopeful that we're going to be able to do it in person, in the coming year. So I'm hopeful, I'm excited, and want to encourage everyone to be a part of that.
Awesome. Yes, I second that 150%. MCAR is so fun, and I really hope we can all be there together this fall. So we have two questions from the Philippine American Coalition on campus, which, hooray, I'm Filipino American. I did not know there was a coalition, and I'm excited to meet you all in person. And the second question is from AU's Hawaii Club. So the first question is, and I'll read it verbatim. It says, we have noticed that there's not enough representation for AAPI in the counseling center and key classes such as AUX2. Will the university take an active interest to hire more API staff and train current staff to receive cultural competency training to work with those diverse communities? So I'll leave that to either Dr. Ah or President Burwell.
Sure. No, I'll take that question. First of all, thank you for that question, because particularly as we're talking about, the rise in discrimination and everything else, with that comes tremendous amount of, the emotional toll that takes. And certainly the ability to access mental health becomes even more necessary as we speak. So with the counseling center, I would say there are a couple of things. Certainly there is room to do more hiring, and to do certainly more hiring, particularly of Asian American Pacific Islander counselors. We have had, one additional person that's come on board. And part of that is really twofold. We are constantly, every time we open up positions and vacancies that come in, it becomes increasingly important for us to look at the diversity of the staff and to have staff that are coming in from as many backgrounds as possible. And we certainly recognize that there is room to do more in this space, particularly around our Asian American and Pacific Islanders. The second thing that also comes with this is that for us, as well as we think about the work, any and every one of our counselors in being hired, they have had to go through comprehensive multicultural counseling. That's actually a prerequisite. So I just want to make sure that that is understood, that is a prerequisite for any counselors who's within our counseling center. The other thing as well is that in addition to making sure that they're coming in with a multicultural counseling background as a requirement, every single one of our counselors are also have a background and training in racial trauma as well. That's been one of the changes that we've brought in over the time that I've been here, and they continue with continuing education in racial trauma. So that's another piece that we've brought into our counseling center staff, in addition to having, of course, expertise in different areas of mental health and mental health support and need. But is there still room to do more, particularly around the representation? Absolutely. And I will say also one last thing about this, Don Mike. For me, one of the pieces as well is that being in Washington, D.C., we have an interesting challenge in that we're competing, our counselors, we're competing in the marketplace, not just with universities, but we're competing to get counselors in people who can be in their own practice as well. And it has become very challenging to hire counselors and to be able to retain them. And so for us, the hiring and the retention is important. But we're also working with our psychology department, because to me, the recruitment of counselors and having representation of counselors starts even in these programs that are PhD programs in counseling, right? We want to make sure that because we have a PhD program in counseling here at American, that even those programs also are diversified, so that it is in many ways training the next generation of counselors that can be more reflective of what this nation is. So that's another part of the work that we feel is important, because we need to continue to build that pipeline of counselors that are graduating from programs and then that are also having an interest in counseling at university level. So we recruit interns from the psychology program to be part of our program, so we can build that pipeline at the front end as well.
Absolutely. Um, Thank you for answering that question, Dr. O. The second question from the AU Hawaii Club, and they've written, one thing has come to our mind. We were wondering if there was any follow-up to the Asian and homophobic hate crime last semester that happened with a graduate student that had committed against a student from Georgetown. It says here, to my knowledge, there was never a press release or an update sent to the university community. So does anybody want to provide an update on that specific issue?
Sure, I can speak to that. So first of all, once when the hate crime took place which was off campus, and once we were notified, we also started our own process, because there was actually a process. Again, when it's a hate crime, it goes through a process which is more at the federal level, right? And it is within the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Police Department and the court systems. So while they were going through that process, we were also going through our own process at the university in terms of what does that mean from a conduct perspective. And we took our immediate action. And so the action for us was, what do you put in place in terms of interim measures, because there are legal issues as well that gets involved in those cases, and we have to work in consultation with the court system. So to answer that question, our immediate thing was to have our process in place, to activate our process as soon as possible around that, to make sure that whoever that individual was, that individual was removed from our community immediately, understanding that Don Mike, they have to go through the legal process separate from the university process.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for answering that. Let's see, do we have one more question? So there's another question in the chat, and this will be our last question. They said, they asked, what do you suggest for AAPI students to do if they received unfair treatment on AU's campus?
Two things. One is, if they receive unfair treatment, the first place is if it's an act of discrimination. As we've talked about, we have an Office of Title IX and Equity. And so there is a process for that. And so students should immediately report that to the Office of Title IX and Equity, and so that they can then take the appropriate actions for investigation. That would be the step that they would take in if there is an issue that relates specifically to discrimination.
And just reflecting, because we have a number of alumni who are engaged with us this evening, we have created a single unified separate office for Title IX and equity for these reasons. When I said we have to have processes that exist that people know about and trust, and so I just want to emphasize that point, because in AUX 1 and 2, it's also a part of it, AUX 1, in terms of knowing where to go, what process you use, and that sort of thing. We try and do that with all of our first year students, but I just think it is important that people know where to go, and that we have created something that is university wide, so that there is a place where people feel comfort and trust to try and go when we have incidents or things like that occur, that people go and use the process. So just emphasizing that point that Banta just made, because for a number of our alums, when I look at your all's years, we have put this in place since you were here.
Yes.
And the other piece about it also that is important on Mike is the fact that, going through that process also ensure that there's no retaliation, because it's incredibly important while people are going through this process to also know that there is no retaliation, for reporting an issue and so forth. But it has to go through the process of investigation and all of that, and then for them to come back with their findings.
Absolutely. And you're right, President Burwell. What am I now? 12 years out from my undergrad time, which isn't a long time, but it is really awesome to see how the university is adapting and changing and becoming more inclusive and focusing on DEI work. It's very encouraging, and also, as I'm sure as my fellow alums on this panel, just makes us all prouder of the school and happy to be part of this community. So thank you everybody for your questions. We've definitely come to the close of our Q&A session, but that doesn't mean that the conversation is over. We definitely have to keep the conversation open, the lines open to communication. So everybody on this panel is accessible through the university and the alumni office. So I want to thank all of our panelists again for your level of transparency and forward-thinking responses to help elevate and inspire our community and its members. It's been such a pleasure serving as the moderator for tonight and this evening's discussion, and I really look forward to advancing our work together and to make an impact for AU's APIAN and all of our AU Eagles, because we're all AU change makers, right? So I truly am eager to see our community ascend to higher heights as we move forward together. So at this time, though, I would like to welcome back President Burwell for closing remarks before we turn it back to our chair of APIAN.
Don Mike, thank you, and thank you for the moderation. Thanks to the panel for their participation, and thanks to everybody for attending. As Don Mike said, this is a part of a process. This is a part of a continuation. So just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who participated tonight, either in the panel or attending. And really want to close with, as we think about that engagement question and our alumni engagement. Thank you all that are our alumni that attended this event, but just thinking really about 3 areas in terms of that engagement. The first is philanthropically, and whether it's the book work that is so important, or what Mina was describing in terms of some of the other areas. Our campaign is a $500 million campaign that we're in the middle of. Change can't wait, so that we support our change makers and our change making students, so that one of the things I mentioned when I spoke at the beginning about making sure every student can have that AU experience, that gets to the internships, that gets to the books, and all of those things, and people can participate, small or large. The second thing is that student engagement. And that is so important to our students. And whether it is through helping them with internships, helping them with the jobs, or just the mentoring on a regular basis with our students, that's a second way to engage. And the third way I would just say is engaging with our alumni events like this, events like MCAR, and the other events that exist. And so I want to close with a big thank you and a big recognition of the importance of this community in terms of making our university what it is and what it's known for, in terms of the change makers that we are and how we think about these issues, and how proud we are of our current students, as we saw. So glad that one of our current students, Chitanya, for being a part of this evening, as well as our alumni. So with that, thank you all so much. Delighted to be a part of the evening. And I think, am I turning it back to you, Megan?
Yes, and thank you so much, President Burwell, for your closing remarks and really your reaffirmation of leadership to the AAPI community at AU. We want to give a special thanks to Dr. Al and our APN members, past, present, and future, who took the time to participate in this evening's conversation. And a special thanks also to Courtney Searles, Vice President, Development and Alumni Relations, and Rainey Lenny, Assistant Vice President with Alumni Relations, for your support and attendance. You know, we really want to see every member of the AU Eagle community succeed, and we want our community to know that engagement doesn't stop after you cross that stage. We have an incredibly supportive community that are eager to celebrate you. And as part of our global identity-based alumni affinity community, we should all understand the importance of collaboration and the ongoing process of knowing when to lead, offer space, listen deeply, and ask those courageous questions. I invite you to join me and Maisha Hawk, APN Vice Chair, and the full APN leadership team to find opportunities to become more involved and to help make a significant impact for future AU Eagles. And while, you know, we recognize the differences within our respective AU journeys, I hope that we all share a common wish for future Eagles particularly of AAPI heritage, to have a supportive and rewarding experience during their time at AU. So please connect with us on social media or contact the AU Alumni Relations Office via the email and the chat. And before you know it, AAPI Heritage Month is coming around the corner in May. So be on the lookout for a save the date and event details in the coming weeks to announce and attend our first Aapian in-person event. We are so thrilled and excited, and if you would like to help us with the event, or if you're interested in joining, the Aapian Leadership Circle, please reach out to me or Maisha or the AU Alumni Relations Office. Thank you again for your attendance, and we do hope to see you in the future at Aapian and at AU events. Thank you and good evening.